everybody. Thank you again for joining me. I tried to make this video yesterday and I think the storm cut in with my connection. So for those of you that listened and found that it got fuzzy, I apologize. I'm redoing the video today, so hopefully this one won't get fuzzy. Today I just want to talk about histamine. One person's superfood can actually be another person's poison. This is a great indicator of a histamine problem whenever you find that you're eating healthy foods like avocado or bananas or bone broth and you're having a lot of issues. This could be related to histamine, especially fermented foods. Fermented foods are some of the most common foods that we recommend. They're extremely healthy, but if you have poor histamine metabolism, they could actually be a problem for you. So if you have a histamine intolerance, consuming histamine-rich foods can lead to lots of issues: allergies, asthma, sinus problems, eczema, chronic pain, menstrual problems. This is just the beginning of the list. So histamine is the topic for today. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Haley Gibson. I'm a registered nurse and functional diagnostic nutritionist. I work with people all over the world as well as locally in Kennesaw, Georgia at Exodus Health Center. And essentially what I do is I help coach people through their health problems and I help get them on the right track with the correct diet and supplementation. And I help you through the process, as it can be really confusing to figure out what is right for you as an individual. This is myself with my family and my fiance at the lake. We were just having a great day. Up above that, you can see our Mountain Challenge group. I know I've talked about them, but I just love them. And this week was the first week that we officially started. So that's our big group of crazy mountain challengers. We run up the side of Kennesaw Mountain. If you're local to the area, you should definitely come hang out with us. It's free every Monday at 6:30. All right, on to the topic. So some people have said that they're allergic to the sun, and I never really understood what they meant by this, but research has actually shown that a histamine response can happen due to UV light. UV light can actually trigger a histamine release. Other research is indicating that those susceptible may have problems with a high-intensity exercise, especially when it's done in a warm environment. So if you find that you're working out and you get really bad facial flushing and wheezing really easily, this could be related to a histamine release. Individuals with periods of high estrogen may have higher than normal histamine responses, and high stress increases histamine levels, and it decreases the body's ability to metabolize histamine. So what exactly is histamine? What am I talking about? Histamine is a very important neurotransmitter and immune messenger molecule. It is involved in process involving hydrochloric acid secretion, so it helps with digestion. It also triages water reserves to key areas of the body, so it helps with water balance and electrolyte balance. It also helps with stimulating an inflammatory response in response to different antigens that you may come in contact with. There's 4 different kinds of histamine receptors. I'm just going to run through them real fast. And endothelial cells, which affect the skin, and blood vessels. So when you have a histamine release, your vessels actually dilate. Benadryl and Claritin block the activity of these receptors. And then you also have histamine receptors in the intestines that control acid secretion or abdominal pain, nausea, heart rate. The third kind is actually found in the nervous system. This can affect your nerves, your sleep, your appetite, and your behavior. And the fourth kind is found in the thymus, small intestine, spleen, colon, bone marrow, and white blood cells. This is highly related to the immune response. So one of the major effects of histamine is causing the blood vessels to swell and dilate. When the body senses that it is threatened, it will secrete higher amounts of histamine. This allows the white blood cells to move quickly through the bloodstream. If you think about your vessels dilating, it allows blood flow to increase. The bloodstream, whenever it is floating through the bloodstream, it can find a potential threat or infection. So this is a very important component of a healthy immune response. So I don't want you to get confused and think that histamine is a bad thing. It's not. We're supposed to have it. The problem is when it is not regulated appropriately, and we're not metabolizing it appropriately. So let's discuss, when exactly does histamine become a problem? It becomes a problem when we have metabolic disturbances that don't allow us to metabolize it appropriately. When histamine is formed, it is broken down by specific enzymes. You can see those enzymes up here on this slide, DAO and HNMT. Both of these are responsible for breaking it down. So the experts state that DAO is the major enzyme involved in histamine metabolism. I can't talk this morning. The enzyme converts the histamine into imidazole acetaldehyde. This does not trigger any sort of reaction in the body. DAO is responsible for ensuring a steady histamine level required for the balance of numerous chemical reactions taking place in the body. So what would cause us to have issues metabolizing histamine? Some individuals have altered DAO production. This can be due to a number of different things. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is actually a contributor to this. Some gut microbes, they actually produce high amounts of histamine, and that's just because of the type of species that they are and what they do to things whenever they ingest them. So if you have some type of bacteria in your gut that is producing large amounts of histamine, you may struggle with too much histamine being present in your body. Copper, vitamin C, and vitamin B6 deficiency. So copper and vitamin C are crucial components of the DAO enzyme, and B6 is a key cofactor that enables DAO to degrade histamine. If you have leaky gut, this could also result in elevated histamine because it contributes to poor DAO function. And then, of course, genetics does play a role. If you have some type of genetic polymorphism in the DAO enzyme, you can actually be more susceptible to developing a histamine intolerance, which makes sense. Use of certain medications. So if you use non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, also known as NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, this can result in difficulty metabolizing histamine. Antidepressants like Cymbalta, Effexor, and Prozac. Immune modulators, Humira, Enbrel, Plaquenil. Antiarrhythmics such as propranolol, metoprolol, cardizem, and Norvasc. Antihistamines such as Allegra and Zyrtec. And histamine blockers such as Pepcid and Zantac. According to expert Dr. Amy Myers, histamine blockers, or a class of acid-reducing drugs, seem like they would help prevent histamine intolerance. These medications can actually deplete DAO levels in your body. So while it may help the histamine initially, if you continue taking these drugs and decreasing your levels of DAO, you're not going to metabolize histamine correctly. So that can result in long-term too much histamine, something that would develop over time. Histamine is different than typical food sensitivities. You're sensitive to one particular food. It is something found in multiple foods, and we'll go over a list here soon. So we begin to have symptoms when we either take in too much histamine or we reduce the DAO enzyme. Histamine intolerance manifests in about 3% of the population. In up to 20% of these cases, the symptoms occur mostly when histamine-containing foods are used in combination with DAO inhibitors, such as alcohol. Approximately 80% of individuals with histamine intolerance are women, and most of them are over 40. The three biggest factors involved with a histamine intolerance are leaky gut syndrome or related disorders like Crohn's disease or irritable bowel syndrome, gluten sensitivity, things like that. The second factor is definitely the genetic polymorphism. There are people with genetic tendencies to have a higher risk factor. So who has a histamine intolerance? How can you tell? This is a super challenging condition to actually diagnose for a number of different reasons. The first is that there are so many popular foods, many of which are considered health foods that are high in histamines. Also, some individuals have a unique gut flora that is producing high amounts of histamine levels. Most doctors are not familiar with histamine intolerance and never consider this as a contributing factor to the person's health challenges. Many physicians actually recommend a diet high in histamine-containing foods. I do too. There's lots of healthy high histamine foods. So fermented foods, like I said, they have incredible health benefits for those with adequate histamine metabolism. Research has shown that people react quite differently to elevated histamine, making it much harder to pinpoint. So I've just noticed that some people can tolerate avocados just fine. Some people respond very oddly to them. They may have itching on the tongue or feel like it just doesn't sit well with them. They may have hives or eczema, rashes. I've seen puffy eyes. So some signs of a histamine intolerance would be headaches, difficulty falling asleep, vertigo or dizziness, arrhythmia, difficulty regulating your body temperature, lots of swings between hot and cold, anxiety, nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, flushing, nasal congestion, sneezing, difficulty breathing, abnormal menstrual cycle, hives, fatigue, and tissue swelling. So it can affect many different areas, and this can be different for everybody who suffers with histamine intolerance. So it is hard to pinpoint. So what I typically do, if someone even suspects that it's an issue, we just go ahead and do a low histamine diet for a week, see how you respond. The 23andMe genetic test will look at genes associated with the DAO enzyme production. So there is testing that you can get done. When an individual has a homozygous mutation, they will most likely struggle with histamine metabolism. So this may not occur until after a stressful season in their life, when their gut barrier breaks down and their adrenal glands are unable to keep up with the demands placed upon them. So this just creates a new vicious cycle of histamine release and the body not being able to cope with it. So typically after a stressful event, something like this can take off and become prevalent. To improve your tolerance to histamine, it is critical to heal the gut lining and address any gut dysbiosis going on. So natural antimicrobials are used. I would recommend working with someone who is qualified to help you through this process, as it is challenging to figure out on your own. So having someone who has experience with it is very important. So some foods naturally have more histamine content. So I just want to talk about some that are actually high in histamine-containing compounds. Fermented alcoholic beverages, so wine, champagne, and beer specifically. Fermented foods like sauerkraut, vinegar, soy sauce, kefir, yogurt, kombucha. Vinegar-containing foods like pickles, mayonnaise, and olives. Cured meats such as bacon, salami, pepperoni, lunch meats. Soured foods like sour cream and sour milk. Dried fruits such as apricot and prunes, dates, figs, raisins. Most citrus fruits are high in histamine. Aged cheese, including goat cheese, nuts such as walnuts, cashews, and peanuts, vegetables like avocados, eggplant, spinach, and tomatoes, smoked fish and certain species of fish, like mackerel, mahi-mahi, tuna, anchovies, and sardines, and processed foods of all types. Preservatives are high in histamines. So these foods do not necessarily contain the next foods I'm about to tell you. The ones I just listed are high in histamine. The next ones actually inhibit DAO. So by inhibiting DAO, we decrease our ability to metabolize histamine, right? So here's some DAO blocking foods: alcohol, bananas, chocolate, cow's milk, nuts, papaya, pineapple, shellfish, strawberries, tomatoes, wheat germ, alcohol, energy drinks, black tea, green tea. So I just listed a bunch of foods that could contribute to the problem. So what are some healthy, low histamine foods? I think that's also important to go over when it comes to diet. We like taking things out, but we need to tell people, okay, well, what can you eat? What is safe? So low histamine foods, freshly cooked meat and poultry, those are fine. So your meat products are fine as long as they're not cured. Like the bacon and salami I talked about. Freshly caught fish is fine. Extra virgin olive oil. Eggs are fine. Gluten-free grains like brown rice and quinoa. Fresh fruit, other than citrus and avocado. and tomato, pineapple, bananas, and strawberries. Other fruits are okay, so you can still do blackberries and blueberries, apples, fresh vegetables except for spinach and eggplant, so broccoli, cauliflower, peppers, onions. Those are all fine. Coconut milk, rice milk, hemp milk, almond milk, all these are fine. Coconut oil and grass-fed butter. Organic coffee. I know you coffee lovers are excited about that. Almond butter is fine. Leafy herbs and herbal teas. So people with histamine intolerance react in a multitude of different ways. Some people cannot handle any high histamine foods, while some can handle certain types and not others. So it really is about figuring out what works for you. Over time, as the histamine content is reduced and the individual improves gut health and reduces inflammation, they improve liver function and they stabilize their adrenals, they'll be able to handle more histamines. So you will, as long as it's not genetic, you will actually be able to add in histamine foods again. So if you're seeing symptoms, I do recommend trying a low histamine diet for a week. See how you do. Acute histamine reactions, if you're struggling with that, like say allergies are really severe, we do actually have something called allergy defense that helps with this. It helps regulate histamine. You take 2 caps every 2 hours to help with allergies. DAO enzymes with meals can really help you metabolize the histamine better. So we use something called HistDAO with every meal if histamine is an issue, and we see that this helps a lot. A diet rich in the flavonoid luteolin has been shown to reduce mast cell activation. So this would be found in carrots, bell peppers, thyme, rosemary, and a few other things. So that can really help downregulate histamine. So many people with histamine intolerance struggle with traditional probiotics. In particular, they typically struggle with the lactobacillus strains, which is found in 99% of the probiotic supplements on the market. So something that we do is we use Prescript Assist with our patients, and we've seen great results with this. It is soil-based and contains high amounts of humic and fulvic acids, which help to detox the gut and reduce histamine levels. We do find that people with histamine intolerance actually tolerate this pretty well. That's a picture of it down on the bottom, the Prescript Assist probiotic, and that's the allergy defense I spoke about as well. So that's all I have about histamine. I just want to thank you for joining me. Like I said, my name is Haley Gibson. I'm a registered nurse and functional diagnostic nutritionist. I work alongside Dr. David Jockers. We help people from all over the world come up with customized plans tailored for them and their health struggles. So if you have any questions about today's talk or just nutrition in general, you can shoot me an email at nutrition@drjockers.com. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.